Okay, so picture this. A ceasefire gets announced in one of the most volatile places on Earth. Everyone starts to breathe a little easier. But then, just hours later, all that hope completely evaporates and a major artery for the entire global economy gets slammed shut. Well, that's not a hypothetical. That's exactly what's unfolding right now.
So, what's at the heart of all this chaos? It's a tiny stretch of water, only 39 kilometers wide, that's just been closed off. Now, that might not sound like much, right? But this single action is threatening to send massive shockwaves across the globe. And we're about to break down exactly how.
All right, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the fragile ceasefire that was supposed to be a lifeline. Then we'll dig into how the whole thing fell apart over one critical disagreement. After that, we'll zero in on the choke point at the center of it all, the Strait of Hormuz. And finally, we'll analyze the very real, very terrifying risk of this whole situation spiraling out of control. To really get how we got here, we have to go back to this brief, fragile moment of hope. A new agreement was on the table, and for a second, it really looked like maybe, just maybe, we were on a path towards de-escalation. For a few short hours, it felt like the entire region was holding its breath. But yeah, that hope didn't last long. This timeline just shows you how quickly it all unraveled. There was a ceasefire back in 2024, but that fell apart after the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. That, of course, triggered retaliation from Hezbollah, which was then followed by a deeper Israeli push into Lebanon. It was just one domino after another, leading to this last-ditch effort on April 8th, a brand new 2-week ceasefire brokered by the US and Iran. And for those few hours, it honestly felt like a breakthrough. The whole world was watching, thinking, okay, maybe this is the off-ramp we've been looking for. But here's the thing. The agreement had a fatal flaw, one that was hidden in the details. Because almost immediately, the whole thing collapsed, and it all came down to this one critical and, as it turns out, fatal disagreement over what the deal even meant. See, a ceasefire is only as strong as how people interpret it. And this is where it gets wild, because you essentially have two sides reading the same words and seeing two completely different things. On one side, you've got Iran and Pakistan who help mediate. For them, the agreement applied everywhere. Pretty simple, right? To them, that obviously included Lebanon. But on the other side, Israel and the US had a totally different take. They argued that the fighting with Hezbollah was a separate conflict, completely outside the framework of this new deal. And Israel, acting on its interpretation, didn't hesitate for a second. They launched Eternal Shadow, which their own military called the largest coordinated attack in Lebanon since this whole thing began. And the cost of that disagreement, it was immediate and it was tragic. In just a single day of these attacks, according to Lebanon's Ministry of Health, at least 112 people were killed. Around 800 more were injured. Just like that, that fragile peace was completely shattered. So this brings us to Iran's response. From Tehran's point of view, the attacks in Lebanon were a blatant violation of the deal. So they decided to hit back, not just with military force, but by squeezing a vital global economic choke point. And they were not subtle about their reasons. The Revolutionary Guard Corps put out a statement saying, flat out, we will punish Israel for the atrocities in Lebanon and the violation of the ceasefire. And their method of punishment, this is the absolute crux of this crisis. Iran made good on its threat and suspended all maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. We have to be clear, this isn't just some regional issue. About a fifth of the entire world's oil supply passes through that one narrow strait. Shutting it down is like putting a clamp on a major artery of the global economy. It's a massive escalation. And just when you think it can't get any more complicated, it does. At the same time they're closing the strait, Iran is also claiming that its own oil refinery on Lebanon Island was attacked, and they've reportedly retaliated by firing missiles at neighboring Gulf nations, which just pulls more and more countries into this incredibly dangerous spiral. Okay, so let's just take a second and really analyze what this all means. Because closing the Strait of Hormuz isn't just one move. It's a trigger for a whole cascade of dangers that could very, very easily get out of hand. The potential consequences here are just incredibly severe. First off, you've got the immediate economic hit. Global shipping and oil supplies are thrown into absolute chaos. Then, the conflict is already spreading, pulling in those neighboring states. That raises the specter of a multi-front war. And here's the really scary part. With so many militaries now operating in such a small, tense area, the risk that one mistake,
One miscalculation could trigger an all-out war is dangerously high. And we can't forget the human cost. Over 1 million people in Lebanon were already displaced before this latest round even started.
So this leaves us with a deeply unsettling question. The framework for peace has totally collapsed. Military actions are escalating by the hour when diplomacy has failed this spectacularly, and the weapons are doing all the talking. What, if anything, is going to stop this from becoming a devastating regional war?